The sun was sinking beyond the jagged cliffs of the desert, painting the sky in the deep fire-red haze of a day gone wild. The land stretched endlessly, cracked earth, whispering wind, and towering pines marking the beginning of a harsh frontier. Coyotes howled from distant canyons, and the slow hum of cicadas filled the dying light. In that unforgiving solitude walked a lone Apache warrior, his name whispered only by the spirits. Taza, son of a lost tribe, last of his bloodline, wandering, because the world had left him with no trail to follow. Days before, Taza's tribe had been scattered by a brutal raid, not by settlers nor soldiers, but by a rival Apache warband driven by hunger, bitterness, and desperation. Taza fought fiercely, but even warriors of proud heart cannot stop the storm when fate decides otherwise. He stood on blood-soaked soil as flames rose, and by dawn, silence swallowed everything. No elders, no young warriors, no sacred chants, just ashes and ghosts. His father's voice echoed inside him. A warrior's path is never empty unless he abandons the spirits. So Taza walked, across rugged canyon beds and cold streams, following tracks only a trained hunter could see. Claw marks, broken twigs, the whispering shapes of dust in the wind. He carried only a knife of obsidian, a bow carved from mountain, juniper in his father's medicine pouch, sacred feathers and painted beads reminding him that though alone, he was never abandoned. Yet doubt seeped into him like smoke. A warrior without a tribe. Was he still a warrior? Was he still needed by the earth, or merely wandering through it like a shadow left behind? The answer would come, but not from spirits, from flesh and bone. Across the wilderness, another wanderer moved like a wounded ghost, a cowboy named Colt Mercer, once a ranch hand, once a son, once a brother. But fate ripped him from the world he knew. His family, gone, not slain by war bands, not taken by bandits, but lost to a brutal winter blizzard that sealed their ranch in snow and silence. Colt buried them himself, hands frozen, lungs burning, tears turning to ice on his cheeks. A good man can endure pain, a strong man can fight through it, but when a man loses everyone, only two paths remain: become iron or become dust. Colt chose iron, but iron bends and iron breaks. He saddled his horse and rode with no destination but away. Away from memory, away from graves, away from the questions that claw at grief. 3 weeks into the wilderness, his horse stumbled on uneven stone and fell hard. Colt rolled across the ground, bruised and winded, but the horse lay still. Broken leg, trembling breath. Colt felt his heart turn to sand as he knelt beside the animal, hand resting on the warm neck. There were no tears left in him. Loss had emptied him long before this moment. He whispered a prayer he was not sure anyone heard, and with trembling hands ended the horse's suffering. Now he walked, rifle slung over his shoulder, no food, no water beyond what the land might spare. He did not fear death. He feared only living with silence. 2 paths, 2 broken men, and fate, that silent wolf, guided them toward each other. Taza moved by the riverbank when he saw fresh footprints. Deep, heavy, not made by warriors, not by hunters trained to disappear. A man lost, a man tired. Taza crouched, palm touching the earth. He studied the print, feeling the story hidden in it. Dragging heel, strained stride, desperation. The wind carried more clues, a faint scent of leather, smoke, and faint sweat. Someone else wandered this land of spirits. He followed. Colt trudged through thick brush, clothes torn, boots scuffed raw. Hunger gnawed at his ribs like wolves chewing bone. His throat dry as sand. He reached a clearing where river rocks glimmered faintly. Water. Salvation. He dropped to his knees, drinking deeply, chest rising with relief. It was then he heard the soft crunch of earth behind him. A warrior stepped, from the shadows and bow drawn, calm and silent like the forest itself. Colt froze, hands halfway to his rifle. Taza's eyes were fierce but steady, a hunter evaluating threat, not death hunger. Colt slowly raised his hands, voice low but steady. I don't want trouble, he rasped. Taza watched him. Pale skin, dirt-stained clothes, hollow eyes. A man broken, not enemy. But caution is the language of survival. Why are you here? Taza asked, voice steady as stone. Colt swallowed. For days he had spoken to no one but ghosts. Lost my horse, he said. Lost everything. Taza's gaze softened a fraction. Loss was a language he knew too well. This land tests men, he replied. Some do not survive. Colt's laugh was dry, humorless. Maybe I ain't meant to. Taza lowered his bow, not out of trust, but recognition. A man ready for death does not kill unless forced. You drink. You rest, he said simply. The spirits will judge your path later. Colt exhaled, relief mixed with confusion. You alone out here? Taza nodded once. Alone is a word spoken by men, he said. The wind never travels without song. Colt didn't fully understand, but he understood the feeling. Still, he muttered, company don't sound so bad. Taza did not smile, but something eased in his expression. In this land, he said, company is earned. They camped near the river as twilight bled into night. Taza built a small fire, not for warmth but for presence, a light against the wolves that roam both land and mind. Colt sat across from him, eyes fixed on the flames like a man afraid they might vanish. The silence between them was not hostile, merely unfamiliar. Taza shared dried deer meat, humble offering of survival. Colt hesitated, pride almost louder than hunger. But hunger won. Thank you, he murmured. Taza nodded once. Men who travel alone do not last long, he said simply. Colt looked up, eyes reflecting firelight and old pain. Then I guess neither of us should be alone anymore. And so began a brotherhood not chosen, but carved by loss and wilderness. Two souls carrying graves in their hearts. Two warriors shaped by different worlds yet bound by silence and struggle. Tomorrow they would face hunger, predators, storms, and the memories that always chase a lonely man's back. But tonight, beneath whispering pines and ancient stars, the earth welcomed them, not as enemies, but as brothers in exile, learning to breathe again. The spirits watched, the land listened, and destiny shifted one heartbeat at a time. The wilderness had taken much from them, but it had also given them each other. Morning broke slow, seeping into the wilderness like gold through cracked stone. Birds called from the treetops announcing a new day. Taza rose before dawn as he always did, sharpening his knife with calm precision. Colt awoke to the sound, blinking, muscles sore from days on foot and nights without real rest. The fire was only embers now, and mist curled above the river. Colt rubbed his eyes, then froze. A fresh rabbit lay cleaned and skewered by the fire pit. The Apache had hunted at dawn, silent as shadow. Taza noticed him stirring. You need strength, he said simply. We traveled today. Colt was still getting used to the warrior's calm certainty. We travel where? He asked, stretching stiff shoulders. Taza tied his bowstring tighter. Toward high ground. Better sight. Safer hunting, Colt nodded. Every word Taza spoke seemed carved from stone. Solid, certain, never wasted. Colt had always been a man of talk and hard work, but silence had become a kind of comfort lately. Out here, words felt small against the wind and mountains. They ate in quiet. The rabbit was fresh, meat rich with the taste of the wild. Colt chewed slowly, each bite reminding him his body still needed life even when his mind had wandered near death. Where'd you learn to hunt that quiet? Colt finally asked. Taza wiped his knife clean on leather. My father taught me that hunger is a teacher. The earth feeds those who respect her. Colt stared at the trees. My father taught me to ride, rope cattle, fix fences. Men like us weren't supposed to end up like this. Taza did not answer at first. Wind rustled pine leaves above them. We are not ended, he said. Only tested. They packed what little they had. Taza with his bow and pouch, Colt with his worn rifle and a canteen half empty. As they headed deeper into the wild, Colt noticed the Apache moved differently. Every step placed with purpose. Every sound registered. Colt had seen skilled ranch hands, but never someone who walked like they belonged to the land itself. "You always lived out here?" Colt asked. "My people lived with the land," Taza answered, eyes scanning the horizon. "Not on it." "It's a beautiful way to think," Colt murmured. "It is the only true way," Taza replied. Hours passed. They climbed through thick pine forests, crossed a rocky ridge where mountain goats watched from cliffs, and descended into a valley where the air smelled of sage and wild earth. By midday, Colt stopped suddenly, breathing hard. "Hold on," he panted. "Been a while since I walked this much without a horse." Taza studied him silently, then pointed to a fallen log. "Rest," he said. "Water." Colt sat gratefully, gulping from his canteen. Taza kneeled nearby, feeling the ground with his palm. He frowned. "What is it?" Colt asked. "Tracks," Taza murmured. "Not deer. Not man-wolves," Colt stiffened. "Think they'll bother us?" "If food is scarce," Taza said, "all creatures take risks." Colt's hand went instinctively to his rifle. "Good thing we ain't food." Taza didn't smile, but something softened in his eyes like distant humor. "Confidence is good. Awareness is better." A moment later, a low howl echoed through the trees, close enough to tighten the air around them. Not one wolf. Several. Colt cursed under his breath and stood. "Tell me you got a plan, partner." Taza rose slowly, bow in hand. "We keep moving. Wolves test strength. If we show weakness, they circle. So no limping or complaining?" Colt muttered. "No fear," Taza corrected. "Fear is blood in the water." They walked again, senses sharp, breath steady. The forest felt alive. Branches creaking, unseen paws padding through undergrowth, eyes watching. The pack followed, not attacking, but close, waiting. Near dusk, they reached a rocky slope overlooking a narrow canyon. Smoke trails rose in the distance. Colt narrowed his eyes. "That a campfire?" "Yes," Taza said. "Hunters, or scouts. Could be trouble, could be help." They shared a glance. Neither man truly trusted strangers anymore. But night meant wolves and fire meant safety. "Let's take our chances," Colt said. Taza nodded. They descended carefully until the smell of smoke mixed with pine and dust reached them clearly. Soon they heard voices, rough, low-spoken. Taza motioned Colt to crouch. Below them, in a clearing, 3 men sat around a fire, rugged, armed, wearing patched coats and dust-caked boots. Hunters by the look of it. A mule was tied nearby with packs of supplies, Colt whispered. "They don't look like soldiers." "No," Taza agreed. "Travelers. But desperate men are dangerous," Colt breathed out. "Desperate men. I guess that makes 4 of us." They stepped out into view slowly, hands visible. The 3 men instantly reached for rifles. "Hold there," one barked. "We mean no harm," Colt called, looking for fire and safe ground to rest. "Wolves been tailing us." The men eyed them suspiciously, eyes flicking between Colt's dirt-torn clothes and Taza's bow and feathered braid. Cowboys were familiar enough in these wilds, but many white men looked at Apaches like danger waiting to happen. One hunter stood slowly. "You traveling together?" he asked. Colt answered without hesitation. "Yes." That surprised Taza, but it was a truth spoken with conviction. They were together now. Brothers forged, not born. The lead hunter jerked his chin reluctantly. "You can take a corner of the fire. But keep to yourselves," Taza nodded once. Colt tipped his hat. They moved in, warmth from the flames chasing away the cold creeping from nightfall. As they sat, one of the hunters glanced at Taza with unease. "You Apache?" Taza answered calmly. "Yes. What you doing riding with a cowboy?" Colt turned sharply, tone firm. "Same thing you're doing sitting with us, trying to live another day." The hunter stared at him a moment, then slowly nodded. Fair enough, the tension eased. A tin pot hissed above the fire. The smell of beans filled the air. Hunger gnawed at Colt's stomach. One hunter smirked. "You boys eat?" Colt shook his head. "Not since sunrise." A tin plate was pushed toward them, rough generosity but real. Colt accepted it gratefully, passing half to Taza without asking. The hunters watched the gesture, curiosity replacing suspicion. Men judge character not by words but by how they share necessity. Night deepened. Wolves howled in the distance but did not approach. Even predators respect fire and numbers. The hunters shared sparse stories, trail hardships, mountain storms, near misses with bears. Colt listened, speaking little. Taza listened even less, but his presence commanded quiet respect. When talk died down and stars filled the sky, the hunters rolled in blankets and slept. Taza sat awake as a warrior does, eyes scanning the dark. Colt sat beside him, whispering low, "You trust them?" "No," Taza answered. "But trust is not needed. Only balance." Colt nodded slowly. "You think we'll find what we're searching for?" Taza looked at the stars, ancient, silent guardians. "We may not find what we lost," he said, "but we may find what we need." Colt followed his gaze upward. "I reckon. Maybe you're right." In the quiet, under endless sky, a truth settled between them. Not spoken but known. They were not alone anymore. Not broken pieces wandering separate worlds. They were two men walking one trail now, carved by pain but guided by something stronger than grief, brotherhood. And tomorrow the world would test that bond again. Dawn crawled across the treetops like a slow-moving flame, gilding the pine needles in pale gold. A thin chill clung to the morning air as the camp stirred. The hunters rose first, boots thumping dirt and metal scraping leather as they checked knives and rifles. Taza was already awake. He had not slept, only watched the tree line, listening to the wolves' distant cries fade into silence. Colt woke slower, rubbing stiff eyes and stretching sore legs. The ground was cold, but there was comfort in waking to company instead of emptiness. He flicked dust off his hat and murmured, "Morning." Taza nodded once, acknowledgement without ceremony. Wolves moved north in the night. "Good," Colt muttered. "Let him find someone else's boots to chew." One hunter, the oldest, poured weak black coffee into tin mugs. Colt accepted one gratefully. Taza refused. The Apache preferred the cold clarity of morning air and stream water. The lead hunter eyed them both. "Where you headed?" Colt shrugged. "Where meat is, where water is, where the earth don't bury us yet." The hunter snorted. "Ain't much mercy in these lands. You two ought to be careful. Out past the ridge, mountain cats stalk every bluff." Colt grinned tiredly. "Reckon wolves weren't enough company?" "Wolves hunt in packs," the hunter replied, voice gravel low. "Cats hunt alone, silent like ghosts." Taza's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened slightly. "Ghosts bleed," he said. A few low chuckles circled the fire, but not without respect. They parted ways shortly after. The hunters headed west toward trapping grounds. Colt and Taza turned north, moving through thick brush where pine needles softened each footfall. The morning was quiet save for the stillness before life wakes. Birds not yet calling, wind barely stirring. Colt exhaled deeply, adjusting the rifle on his back. "Never thought I'd share beans with strangers and not feel like pulling a gun." Taza walked forward without looking at him. "Even a lone wolf knows pack is strength," Colt grinned faintly. "That what we are now, a pack?" "We are two men who do not wish to die," Taza said. "That is enough." "Fair point." They continued until they reached a ridge overlooking a valley. Below, sunlight spilled over rolling meadows dotted with boulders like sleeping giants. A herd of elk grazed near a stream far in the distance. Colt whistled low. "That's meat enough to feed a town." Taza scanned the herd, muscles poised, breath steady. "Too far. An uphill return is foolish. Then what we huntin'?" Taza pointed to the tracks in soft earth, fresh, deep, spaced wide. "Deer, too, moving south. And we move after them, I guess." Taza stepped lightly forward. "We move like hunger has memory." Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, heat building but not enough to break the morning cool. Colt learned to match Taza's pace. Slow, patient, stepping where the warrior stepped, silence becoming a discipline rather than emptiness. Birds called overhead now, life waking in waves. They moved along a narrow animal path when suddenly Taza raised a hand, palm stiff. Colt froze without question. A low rustling came from the brush ahead. A shape shifted, not deer. Lower to the ground. Muscles coiled, eyes glinting yellow between leaves. "A cat," Colt whispered. Taza nodded once, already drawing an arrow, silent and steady as mountain stone. The mountain lion emerged, tawny, sleek hunger burning in its eyes. It stalked forward, tail twitching, muscles rippling beneath fur. Colt's breath tightened. He slowly eased his rifle from his shoulder. "Do not shoot unless it leaps," Taza murmured. Colt raised a brow. Why wait for it to jump on me? Because a loud shot draws company. Arrow speaks softly. The cat crouched, growling low. It wasn't afraid, and it was sizing them as meat. Colt fought the urge to run or fire immediately. Sweat prickled across his neck. Taza exhaled slow, a hunter's breath steady, certain. The cat sprang, but not at them. It darted sideways, claws flashing, tackling a rabbit that had broken cover. In seconds, the rabbit was silent. Taza lowered his bow. Spirit chose another sacrifice. Colt let out a shaky laugh. Glad it didn't choose me. Taza did not smile, but his tone shifted, almost approving. You did not shake. I shook inside. Only inside matters less. They moved on. Soon they found deer tracks crossing a creek. Fresh scat, fresh hoof prints. Taza crouched, reading ground as a scholar reads scripture. They rest nearby. Colt swallowed quietly. Hunting wasn't foreign to him. But hunting with purpose, when survival hinged on it, changed the air. They followed the creek upstream until Taza raised his bow again. There, 2 deer grazing near berry bushes. Taza whispered. Circle left. If they run, guide them toward me. Colt moved as instructed, steps gentle. His boots still snapped twigs now and then, but he tried. Sweat trickled down his spine. A breeze shifted. The deer's ears lifted. They sniffed. Muscles tightened. Then hooves pounded. They bolted but not away, toward Taza's waiting aim. The Apache loosed the arrow. A clean sound and a whisper, a breath. The arrow struck true, neck swift and final. 1 deer fell instantly. The other vanished into brush. Colt approached, breathing hard. That was something. Taza touched the fallen animal reverently. Life feeds life. He drew his knife, whispering words in Apache tongue, honoring the spirit. Colt watched with respect, hat lowered unconsciously. You pray for every kill? Yes, we thank what we take. Many forget gratitude. Reckon I forgot a long time ago, Colt murmured. Taza paused, eyes meeting his. It can be remembered. They cleaned the deer and prepared bundles of meat. Colt lifted a heavy share, grunting with effort. Never thought I'd hunt to stay alive, he muttered. Always hunted for winter stores or ranch supply. The land teaches new purpose when old ones break, Taza replied. They hiked back toward river territory, burdened, but fed. As they neared their previous clearing, a sound cut the quiet. Not animal. Metal scraping, wood breaking. Taza stiffened, hand flying to bow. Colt silently cocked his rifle. They crept forward. The campsite was disturbed. Boot prints, bags torn open, gnawed bones scattered. Wolves, not hunting, scavenging, desperate, bold. Good thing we didn't leave food out, Colt whispered. They grow fearless, Taza murmured. The land grows lean. Hunger changes all creatures. They rebuilt the small fire pit, hung strips of meat to smoke. Smoke curled into sky. A quiet satisfaction filled the clearing. Colt sat wiping sweat from his brow. Funny thing, he said quietly. World turned upside down, and somehow I feel more human out here than I did on the ranch. Taza sat across from him. When a man loses everything, he finds truth. You search not for land or work. You search for belonging. Colt stared into the fire, voice low. And you? You searching for your tribe? Taza gazed into the trees, eyes distant. My tribe is gone. But their spirit is not. I search for a place where their memory breathes. Colt nodded slowly. Maybe we find it together. The Apache warrior did not look at him, but a subtle shift in his voice answered more than words could. Maybe. As darkness fell again over the pines, they ate fresh meat, firelight reflecting in their eyes like burning determination. They were no longer wandering ghosts, no longer men waiting for death to claim them quietly. They hunted. They shared labor. They protected each other. And without ever deciding to, they had taken their first step toward becoming brothers of the land, not just survivors on it. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new threats, new choices. But tonight, beneath stars ancient and indifferent, 2 men carved out a circle of life in a wilderness that wanted them swallowed. And they held it, side by side, alive, together. The next morning began not with silence, but with a chill wind cutting through the valley like a warning whispered by nature itself. Clouds crawled across the sky, heavy with the promise of rain or storm. The air smelled sharp, electric, a sign that something wild stirred in the land. Taza rose without sound, bow slung over his shoulder, face unreadable as carved obsidian. Colt rubbed the sleep from his eyes, joints cracking like old floorboards. He glanced upward at the gray sky. "Bad weather comin'," he muttered. Taza nodded once. "The earth prepares." "So should we," Colt exhaled slow. "We packed enough meat to last a few days. Maybe we stay put? Wait the storm out?" Taza studied the trees. "Storm is not danger, then what is?" The Apache pointed to the ground, to tracks. Fresh, deep, many. Wolf prints circled the clearing from night patrol, heavier than before. "Wolves grow bold," Taza said. "Hunger makes courage." Colt tightened his grip on his rifle. "Then we keep the fire big. Fire is strength," Taza agreed. "But fire is also noise, and men hear noise," Colt frowned. "Men?" Taza nodded toward the tracks. "Not only wolf marks." He pointed again, deeper indentations, spaced heavy and straight. "Hoof prints, horses fresh, only hours old." Colt's jaw tightened. "Travelers? Or trouble?" Taza's voice remained calm but grave. "No traveler rides silent in storm wind. Hunters move loud. Soldiers move loud. Raiders move loud," Colt swallowed. "And men who move quiet?" "Men like ghosts," Taza answered, eyes narrowing. "Or scouts." A beat of silence sat between them, thick and heavy. Colt spat dust. "Well, hell. They built the fire high anyway, smoke rising like a beacon to sky and threat alike." Colt cleaned his rifle, movement slow, deliberate. Taza sharpened his knife, running stone along steel in measured rhythm as though sharpening more than a blade. Sharpening spirit. "You think those riders will return?" Colt asked. "They will," Taza replied. "Curiosity is hunger too." "Then we best be ready." Taza's eyes glimmered like flint-catching light. "Fear makes prey. Preparation makes hunters," Colt smirked. "Reckon I choose the second." Before they could say more, a rustle broke through the brush, controlled, steady. A warning. Instinct tightened Colt's shoulders. He reached for his rifle. Taza already held an arrow. Not wolves. Men. 3 emerged from the trees, same crude coats as the hunters from before. But these were not the same men. Rougher. Harder. Beards knotted like they hadn't washed in a season. Pistols on belts. One carried a shotgun resting casual like a promise of violence and confidence. Their leader spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Look here, boys. We found fire in wolf country." Colt stepped forward just enough to show spine. "Trail's open. Fire's ours. Move along," the men chuckled low. "You speak mighty bold for someone sharing borrowed land." Taza stood silent, unreadable, but the air around him tightened like a drawn bowstring. The leader's eyes drifted to him. "And what have we here? Apache stray?" Taza didn't blink. "Warrior," the man smirked. "Ain't no tribe left to call you that." Colt's hand twitched toward his weapon. "Watch your tongue." The man's face hardened, cockiness turning to threat. "You two camping out here ain't by accident. Where's your party? Where's the rest?" "There is no rest," Colt answered coldly. "Just us." The man raised his brows, then looked around, sniffing the air like a predator. "You smoking meat?" "Smells fresh." Colt's voice stayed low, steady. "We hunted. We earned it." "Earned?" The man scoffed. "Nobody earns nothing in these wilds. You take what you can." Taza's voice finally broke the air, quiet but razor sharp. "A man who takes what he did not earn is a thief." The forest stilled. The leader's face twitched. Pride wounded. "You calling me a thief?" Taza did not move. "I call you hungry. Wolves are hungry too." One of the raiders stepped forward, hand brushing his pistol grip. "You two better offer us some meat. Cost of staying alive out here." Colt looked at him dead on. "Cost of taking from us might be higher." The man froze. Taza's bow rose an inch. Not drawn, just present. Like death waiting politely. The raiders stared at the two of them. One rugged cowboy, one stoic Apache, and standing shoulder to shoulder. Firelight catching steel and sinew. They didn't blink. They didn't flinch. Predator met predator. After a long moment, the leader laughed, short, humorless. "You boys got teeth. I'll give you that." He spat again, turned, and jerked his head. "Come on. Wolves will get 'em sooner or later." The 3 disappeared into the trees, footsteps fading, leaving silence thick and sharp as a blade edge. Colt let out a breath. "That could have gone real bad." "It still may," Taza replied. "They leave because they plan to return. With friends. With hunger." Colt sat, shoulders heavy. "World's gone cruel. The world was always cruel, Taza said. People only see truth when comfort dies. The storm broke near evening, sudden wild tearing across the valley like sky in revolt. Rain hammered earth, turning dust to mud. Lightning cracked. Thunder roared across mountains like ancient war drums. They built shelter beneath a rocky overhang, fire roaring under stone while rain sheeted in front like a curtain of silver. Smoke drifted sideways, wind howling through trees like spirits crying warning. Colt stared at the wild sky. You ever seen a storm like this? Yes, Taza said. When spirits clean land for battle, Colt swallowed. Battle with who? Taza didn't look at him. Men who forget they are men. Colt stared through the rain. Thunder boomed. You really think those raiders coming back? Taza nodded, steady as earth. Yes, and us? We stand? We stand, Taza answered, voice like stone meeting storm. Because there are two kinds of men, men who run, and men who become mountains. Colt slowly nodded. I ain't running. I know, Taza said simply. That is why you live. Night fell thick and heavy. Rain weakened, but wind kept howling. The fire hissed low, licking soaked wood. Colt leaned against stone, exhaustion dragging at his bones. Taza, he murmured. Yes. You ever think fate put us here for a reason? Taza did not answer for a long moment. Thunder rolled far away, softer now, a giant retreating. When you lose everything, the Apache said finally, you either break or you become something new. Colt's eyes softened. What are we becoming? Brothers, Taza said. Or ghosts. We choose soon, Colt chuckled, tired but real. A branch cracked in the woods. Both men froze. Not lightning, not storm, not nature. Footsteps slow, many surrounding. Colt lifted his rifle. Taza lifted his bow. Rain dripped over stone. Fire popped. Trees rustled with shadow. Taza spoke without fear. The wolves return. Colt's breath tightened. Wolves on 2 legs or 4? Taza's eyes hardened, jaw set. Both. The night held still, a breath waiting to break. Tomorrow would be war, and the wild would decide who was prey and who was legend. The night before the storm of battle, the jungle was silent in a way neither the Apache warrior nor the cowboy had ever heard. No wind, no night birds, no rustling leaves. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for 2 men who had once been strangers to face something far larger than themselves. A war band of ruthless raiders, men without tribe, without law, had come hunting, to finish what they had begun months ago. They had taken the Apache's family. They had burned the cowboy's ranch. And now they were marching through the jungle with torches, their voices echoing like a death chant. The Apache sat cross-legged beside their small campfire, sharpening his blade with smooth practice strokes. Each drag of stone across steel sang in the night, a quiet, controlled sound of intent. Across from him, the cowboy cleaned his rifle one last time, fingers steady, face hard with resolve. Neither spoke for a long while. They didn't need to. They had already chosen their fate, and they would meet it side by side. Finally, the cowboy took a slow breath. Reckon we could be riding horses in open plains right now, he muttered. The Apache nodded once, or hunting deer in mountains. But here we are. Here we are, the cowboy echoed, a sad smile tugging at his face. They each knew the truth. This fight wasn't about glory or revenge alone. It was about ending the fear that had chased them since they were boys. It was about proving that 2 lost souls from 2 different worlds could stand together and turn fate itself aside. Before the fire burned out, the Apache lifted a handful of earth and let it fall slowly. For my brothers, he whispered. The cowboy took off his hat and bowed his head. For my daddy and my brothers on the ranch. Then in silence they clasped forearms. The bond between warriors, no tribe, no color, no flag dividing them. Just survival, honor, and brotherhood earned through hardship and battle. When dawn came, it crawled slow over the treetops like a wounded beast. Mist pooled at their feet. They stood atop the ridge that overlooked the valley path where the raiders would pass. The cowboy had set traps through the night, wire snares, trip explosives made with gunpowder and vine triggers, pits sharpened with stakes of jungle wood. The Apache had crafted deadfall logs and concealed pits with woven branches. They had turned the land itself into an ally. From afar they heard drums, rough voices, boots stomping leaves. They bring many, the cowboy murmured. Better that way, the Apache said. More spirits to fall. Soon the jungle shuddered as the raiders marched in, more than 20 strong, armed with rifles, machetes, and fire. Their leader rode in front, a scarred brute with eyes like dead stone. These men had taken everything from both warriors. They had carved themselves into nightmares. The cowboy crouched low, rifle steady, breath shallow. The Apache notched an arrow, silent as smoke. Now, the Apache whispered. The cowboy fired, and the leader toppled from his horse before the sound of the rifle even cracked in the air. In the same instant, the Apache's arrow pierced the throat of another raider. Then chaos erupted. Gunfire split the stillness. Men shouted, a mix of fear and rage, scrambling for cover. But the traps sprang, logs swinging, ropes yanking, men screaming into the trees, pits swallowing legs and lives. 2 men versus 20, but the jungle fought with them. Still, the raiders fought hard. Bullets tore through leaves. One grazed the cowboy's arm, tearing cloth and skin. He grunted but didn't fall. The Apache lunged from the brush, blade flashing, and in 2 swift motions one raider fell clutching his neck while another howled, clutching a slashed leg. They moved like shadow and thunder, one silent, one storming steel and gunfire. Yet numbers had weight. Bit by bit the raiders pressed forward. The cowboy's rifle clicked dry. He tossed it aside and drew his revolver, firing until only smoke and echoes remained. The Apache's quiver emptied, and he drew his tomahawk, the blade singing through air and bone. Finally, only a handful of raiders remained, panting, furious, scared. Their new leader, a tall brute with scarred fists, shouted curses as he charged them with a blood-stained machete. The Apache stepped forward, but the cowboy reached and caught his arm. "My fight," the cowboy said. The Apache looked into his eyes and nodded once. The man came like a bull, swinging wild. The cowboy dodged, rolled, fired. Click, empty. He ducked again, grabbed a fallen branch, and blocked a strike. Wood shattered. The Apache circled wide, waiting if needed, but trusting his brother to stand. The cowboy fought with grit, not grace. He threw fists, elbows, knees. He had learned enough from his Apache companion to move lighter, strike sharper. The final blow came when he feinted low, then struck a rock hard into the raider's jaw. The man fell, breath gone, life running out. Silence rolled over the jungle again. The cowboy staggered, breathing hard, face streaked with sweat and dirt. The Apache placed a hand on his shoulder. "You fought with the heart of a mountain lion," he said. "You taught me," the cowboy replied, voice raw. They walked among the fallen, ensuring none would rise again. Not out of cruelty, but necessity. Some enemies could never be allowed to return. When it was done, they stood atop the ridge again. Smoke drifted. The jungle slowly returned to life. Birds calling cautiously, leaves rustling, wind returning as if the world could breathe once more. "We are no longer hunted," the Apache said softly. "No," the cowboy agreed. "And we ain't alone in this world anymore." The Apache turned to him. "What path will you walk now?" "Whichever one you choose," the cowboy replied without hesitation. The Apache considered that for a long moment. Then we walked together. 2 men once lost. Now brothers made not by blood but by survival, fire, and loyalty. They took their packs, weapons, and walked deeper into the green world, toward a life unpromised but earned, not as Apache and cowboy anymore, but as warriors bound by respect, forged in trial and destined to carve their own path side by side. No family left behind. No fear left in their hearts. Only the road ahead, wild and open, waiting for them like freedom itself.